Good morning. Well, it's almost Christmas. Well, it might even be Christmas by the time you watch this. If so, Merry Christmas to you all and a Happy New Year. Now, being Christmas, some of us outdoorsy type folks might get given money or vouchers or whatever for new gear. And being winter now, I thought it would be interesting to address something that, I don't know, there's a lot of misinformation about out there, let's put it that way, and that's sleeping bags. I've watched a couple of videos about this recently, and most of them make some very good points, so I thought I'd just give you sort of my take on it. Now, there's the whole down versus synthetic argument. Now, down is lighter, can be warmer depending on the quality, and obviously compresses more. So if you're more of a distance guy, a hiker, down is probably a good option for you. The one thing I will say against that, certainly for the UK, we have a bit of a damp climate. When down gets damp, it loses its insulation to a certain degree. Certainly if it gets properly wet, it's no good at all. Where synthetic will still insulate you, will still keep you warm when it's wet. Personally, I tend to default to synthetic. For winter time, yes, they're bigger, they're heavier, they take up more room. But in some ways it's a safer option. So it's down to you and what you're using it for, how far you're traveling with it, what the weather's like. I thought I'd bring a couple of my favorite bags just to show you that you don't have to spend a fortune. There is compromises, but they're both well worth taking a look at if you want something warm for winter, but you don't want to spend a fortune. So, what's in the bag? Oh, first we've got this big beastie. My British Army medium weight bag. Very good for several reasons. It's very warm. It's synthetic, so it didn't matter if it got wet. The type of outer shell has a certain amount of water repellency, not massive, you can't lay out in the rain in it, but heavy condensation inside your tent or something like that, it's not going to affect this. It'll be all right. Center zip, convenient getting in and out of it, especially if you're a side sleeper. Sometimes I find with a normal bag, when I turn to my side, I end up with the zip underneath me, which can be a bit uncomfortable. So center zips are great, I think. One thing to look for though, if you go for any center zip bag, you need a decent size baffle underneath it. The zip is the, should we say, the weak point for heat retention. So you need that decent baffle between you and the zip to try and keep that heat in there. The other thing with the army bag is the fact that the outer shell is floating, so when some heat does get through the insulation, it always will, no insulation's perfect, this outer piece traps it quite well and it sort of blows up a bit like a balloon. Works great, but once it's fully lofted and full of warm air, when it's time to pack it away, it can be a pig to pack, it really can, because it just blows up like a balloon. So yeah, that's the only real, not downside, but the only sort of fight I have with it is getting it back in the bag once it's lofted. For a more traditional bag, oh, come out. My Vango Nightstar 375. It's a really warm bag, really cozy, not expensive. I can't think what these go for currently, but they're £50 or less, let's put it that way. The sort of performance you'll get from this versus a down bag, you're going to have to pay £200, I would have estimated, to get that performance in down. Again, bulky. It doesn't pack particularly small, that's why I put them loose in my rucksack and squish them in the bottom. It seems to work better than having a stuff sack. You just cram it in the bottom and then put your gear on top and it squashes it. Weight wise, synthetic bag for winter, you're always going to be looking at 2 kilos. You can't get away from that, I'm afraid. If we're thinking about, what can I say, the temperature ratings, of course, you get the normal, what do they call it? Comfort, transition and risk, or extreme ratings. Well, bin the bottom 2, because they're just rubbish. You want to go out, you want to camp, you want to be comfortable. So forget all this other rubbish. Concentrate on the comfort, and then even add a little bit. This is comfort -2. With this bag, yes, -2 comfort, no problem at all. I would always add at least 5-degree minimum on top of that. So as soon as it gets down to about 5 or whatever degrees, I'm looking at sub-zero bags. It's very easy to underestimate the weather, get cold and have a miserable time. If you take a bag that's over the top, at least you've got the option of unzipping it, letting some heat out. Once you've cooled down, you can close it back up. If you're the other way round and you're freezing cold and that's all you got, you're snookered, aren't you? There's not a lot you can do. The only bit of advice I could give you in that situation is don't just lay there and shiver. Grab your jacket. Either put your jacket over the bag like an extra layer, or even put your jacket on and get back in. It doesn't matter. Keeping warm is the object of the exercise. If it's, you know, getting quite nasty, get out the bag, jump up and down on the spot, run on the spot, do something. Get yourself warm, generate some heat in your body, get back in, use the sleeping bag to confine that heat. A sleeping bag isn't warm. All it's doing is holding your own body heat. If you're cold, you're cold. If you get in it warm, you're going to keep some of that warmth in, even if your bag's rubbish. So that would be my advice on that. The only other thing I would say is one of the major heat loss places in the sleeping bag, which you don't see many people talk about, is through the stitching between the baffles. Now on a lot of the cheaper bags, the stitching will be all the way through. So you've got your outer layer, your insulation and your inner layer is all stitched together in one. A better design bag like this one, this stitching for the outer layer goes into the insulation. It doesn't go right through. The line of stitching on the inner to the insulation is offset. So where this is stitched there and there, inside it'll be stitched there and there. So there's no stitching all the way through. It's no good having a bag that lofts up about this thick if either side of it you've got a gap with stitching that the heat is going to escape between the baffles. By having the stitching offset, there is no direct path from inside to outside. So that's just something to have a look at. Very difficult obviously if you're buying online. That's why I would always advise go into a camping type shop, check the bags out properly. Let's face it, you don't have to buy it from the shop. You can go back online and find a better deal, but at least check out the design in the shop. And of course the other thing is the decision, are you going to go mummy bag or a traditional bag, you know, a rectangular bag? A mummy bag's always going to be warmer. There's less sort of dead air inside, less space inside that's going to need heating. The problem with that is some people find them restrictive, especially if you're a larger person, or if you're quite fairly wide in the shoulder like I am. For my height, I'm sort of out of proportion. Carefully look at the mummy bags. I don't find it an issue when they're sort of narrow from, should we say, hips downwards towards the foot box. That's no problem. Your feet are actually warmer if it's the smaller one at the bottom. But I do like them where they flare out quite dramatically, so you've got the space at the top. You don't want that really tight feeling. It's not comfortable, it's not natural, it's not how you sleep at home under a duvet. You've got room to move about. So yeah, just be careful. If possible, go to a shop and try them out. That's the obvious answer. This one I actually went to the shop and tried out, and I'm glad I did. It only just fits lengthways. This is a slightly shorter bag, the Nightstar 375, than a traditional bag, and at 6 foot it's okay for me. I wouldn't want to be any taller than 6 feet to be in this bag. It would be too restrictive. But again, the closer you can get the bag to match you and your shape, the less wasted space that you've got to heat up. So I am always very warm in this, because it could have almost been tailored to fit me. So yeah, just a couple of hints. I thought it's that time of year where people might be doing some January shopping for the upcoming season, doing some camping, and I just thought I'd give you a few hints on what I find personally works for me in as far as choosing a sleeping bag. You don't have to spend a fortune, but just bear in mind size, shape, and whether the weight and pack size is going to work for what you want to do with it. That's the important thing. Okay, I'll see you all in the new year.